One of the biggest challenges with generative AI is getting your framing exactly as you have it imagined in your head. For example, if I were to type out a prompt, a medium shot of pancakes on the counter of a 1950s diner, I'll get stuff like this, but this is far from the idea that I had in my mind, which is something like this. This is an image that I generated in Playbook 3D. It basically combines the best of both worlds. You get the power of generative AI paired with the fine-tuned control of working in a 3D space with a 3D camera. And in this video, we're going to do a deep dive into how Playbook 3D works and how you can use it to create images and videos with precise camera control. Let's jump into it. Now, for a little bit of backstory, if you want to find out more about the origin and some of its creators, I did talk to Skylar and JD at AWS. We've got a whole interview with them that you can check out if you want a little bit more of the backstory of how Playbook came to be. Super young, very impressive story. And also, we used Playbook for our Culver Cup AI competition. This was one of the tools we had to use. And so we have a whole separate video of how we use Playbook in our creative pipeline, of our behind the scenes video of how we made our AI short. So you can also go check that out. So for Playbook itself, head over to the website and we'll jump into Playbook. Now, it's still a beta app, and there's going to be some quirky things or some like features that you might expect to exist, but they don't exist yet. But there's an active Discord, and JD and Skylar are always talking about how they are actively adding elements that you expect. So I'll note some stuff that might be missing that you might expect. The main thing is there's no saving. So basically, when you have your session, you build out your 3D scene or whatever you want to render or generate, and then you've got to generate it. Because if you refresh the page or you bounce out and come back in, it could reset your session. And there's no way to bring your stuff back currently as I'm recording this. They know about this. They're working on ways to add settings to save your scenes. So just keep that in mind. You got to do what you want to do in the one session, and then you got to bounce. My scene is loaded with the diner scene from Global Objects, which is what we used in the Culver Cup AI short film. We were required to use it, and so they loaded it into our accounts. So when you load this, you'll just have an empty space. You won't have this diner scene. And again, this is still sort of the default for me because there's no way to load scenes or save scenes. So you won't have a diner scene, but this diner scene is actually a good example that's preloaded of how you can use Playbook. So we'll go over that, but these are all just basic models that you can import, and we'll go over importing 3D models and objects in a second. So overall for the interface, we've got our 3D space. If you've used any other type of 3D software like Blender or Unreal, it's pretty similar as far as navigating. I do have a mouse for this because working in any type of 3D space, a 3-button mouse makes it a lot easier. So you'll get the same kind of navigation tools that you'd expect. You can orbit, middle button, I'm zooming in and out, and then left, I can pan side to side or up and down. And then same basic navigation. When you click on an object, you have your motion or your controls to move it in space. And if you press the button G, you can toggle between if you want to adjust its position or its rotation, or because this is a camera, there is no scale. If you were to cycle through another object, you could adjust its scale by hitting G and cycling through. And so sometimes it can get a little quirky as far as selecting objects and clicking and dragging where it might select something else. And there's no layer panel to more easily navigate and select what layer you want to pick. Again, another feature that they know about that they say they are adding, but just keep that in mind. It can be a little quirky as far as selecting the actual item that you want to select. And then over here on the right, we have our preview window of what the camera sees, and it updates in real time. So as I'm dragging, you can see the camera view changes. And then we have some settings where you can adjust what aspect ratio we want. So 16:9, a more traditional aspect ratio, and then also what lens we want it to mimic. So we have a 50 mil. We'll just leave it on at that. And then over here on the left, we have our sort of controls for what prompting and what kind of control we have. It defaults to generative retexture workflow, which is pretty much what we want to do, where we take this textureless, these 3D objects, and then get our framing that we have here with the camera, and then use generative retexture to change the style, but honor the items and the objects and the position in the scene with that. All right, so as an example, let's just make a quick frame. Look at this nice diner shot, and then you can choose what base model you want. So it defaults to Stable Diffusion, but you can also switch to Flux, which usually gets better quality outputs, but Stable Diffusion is faster, and you'll also have more control over how things generate, which I'll go over in a second. And then there's a couple of default styles that you can change if you know that it's going to be, you want to go something that's anime or 3D cartoon, but I'm just going to leave it at photoreal. You could also upload your own LoRa if you do have it, but it's not really an upload. It's basically a form, and JD or Skylar will connect with you and then help you upload it in the background. And then so we have our scene prompt here. So this is what it defaults to. Anything in parentheses means that it should get extra weight or extra emphasis. And so I'll just leave it at the default right now with the 1950s diner. Or actually, no, you know what? I will change that to the steampunk diner. And then I will hit Q and it will render or generate until I'm old school, but I keep calling stuff rendering. And this is a previous image that they have as a sample that use that default prompt of the 1960s diner. And you can see it'll have a dragging slider. So you can see what the original frame was within the 3D space and how it generated it out here. And so it does take some interpretation as far as like it didn't keep the sign, it changed it to a window, but the actual geography, it's got the booths here, it's got the counter and the chairs. So as far as like honoring the framing, honoring the geography, it did a really good job with that. And then I'll switch the model to Flux and you can get a comparison. I'll keep the same exact angle and then I'll cue that. And so you can get a comparison of how the two models kind of behave. All right, and this was with Stable Diffusion, Steampunk, and as you can see, honored the geography. It definitely has a steampunk vibe. Looks great. It did do the weird thing where it kind of interpreted this booth going all the way in the back, so a little bit of some weird quirkiness. But overall, like I think it does a great job where it's like it really keeps the geography and keeps the space of the scene and your framing and transforms it. And then all this stuff is nothing that you couldn't then bring this into Midjourney or Ideogram and do selections to kind of just clean it up with selective regeneration. All right, and then this one is with Flux. I went a little bit crazier on this one. I find Flux usually has more detail and usually performs better in this case. I feel like Stable Diffusion actually performed better. It's got the steampunk vibe, but just added some weirder bits of stuff like this. I don't even know what that is. A medieval person. The diner's up in the city. You got options, and obviously, as with anything with AI, you need to experiment. All right, so one other interesting thing, if we go back to Stable Diffusion, I mentioned Stable Diffusion gives you more prompt control. So another cool thing you can do is you have your general scene prompt, but let's say you wanted to give specific items in your scene a different prompt or more weight. So here are just some general settings as far as strength of the prompt, or I'm sorry, structure strength. So how much to maintain the scene geography, how much to let some creative inputs come in. But the cool thing is masks. So it's basically masks are sort of like layers or groups of layers. So you can assign different groups to different masks and then give those masks a prompt. So for example, let's say mask 1 is, I believe, everything. Mask 2, add an object. So let me add the bar and then say bright pink neon diner bar. All right, so giving it a very standout prompt, bright pink neon diner bar, we can see that it kept the same vibe of everything. It has a steampunk vibe, but that specific object, it honored our second prompt and made it bright pink. So it gives you a little bit more control if you want to give a specific 3D item in your scene a very specific prompt. That's a great use case. This only works with Stable Diffusion. Flux, you don't have the same control. See, there's no advanced options here. But yeah, another awesome tool in the toolkit to give you more control over how the scene generates. And then one other thing too, this is coming soon, but you'll be able to pipe this workflow into ComfyUI if you do use ComfyUI, so you can build out your scene and then connect it into your nodes in ComfyUI if you want to have more control over what kind of prompts or models or anything of how you're using it. All right, so kind of covered that's a gist of how the interface and how you can do some basic prompting with Playbook. Now let's jump into, we've got this nice diner scene here, but it's kind of cheating because it's preloaded on my account. You're not going to have this. So let's go over how you would bring in your own 3D objects. So two sites I've been enjoying using. One, Envato Elements. They actually just added a 3D marketplace, so you could download some 3D objects from here. The one thing to keep in mind is it doesn't support every 3D format that you might be used to. So it just supports GLTF and GLB files. So I'll find some there. But one thing I did want to mention before that I forgot is that you can create some basic objects. You can bring in your own photos and you can create or add a basic cube or basic plane. So you can add a plane and use that if needed. This is the camera. Oh, there's the cube that just created. So yeah, it's very basic, obviously very basic shapes. I don't even know if you can delete. I don't Okay, you can delete. You can add some photos or stuff, but for the most part, you're going to be wanting to bring in models from elsewhere. So let's just bring in something we can put in our diner. We can get crazy. Maybe we'll bring in a car or a bus. But here we can filter out to make sure we only look at formats that we are able to import into the scene. I don't want something too wacky. Yeah, let's bring in a Vespa. All right, so we go back to Playbook, import, bring in our scooter file, and we've got our scooter and whatever colors and stuff. It will honor it. And this is the issue that I'm talking about, where you can sometimes accidentally drag stuff. All right, so we got our scooter. Let's position our camera to make it look somewhat interesting. It's also a giant scooter, so I'll hit G a few more times and just scale it down, not like that. Also not like that. Oh my god. Okay, yeah, this is where things can get challenging in selecting the items you want. I believe there is a new shortcut where you can pin or just modify the item you select so it doesn't keep picking other things. I just don't remember what that shortcut is right now. Okay, but that's good enough. And then if we get back to our camera, where'd our camera go? There's our camera. If we get back to our camera and get in a position. Okay, so we've got crazy angle, a little different angle. We have the diner bar and our scooter in it. So let's change the style. We'll call it a futuristic diner and red space scooter in the diner. All right, and let's generate that and see what it does with the scooter. Sometimes it does weird, quirky stuff like it didn't. It seems like it kept my old prompts, but it has a new image. And this one time it definitely did keep it. Okay, and then for some reason sending it again honored the updated prompt. Sometimes there's quirky stuff. Also, JD and Skylar, they're active on Discord, and you can message them with like weird stuff that happens to you, and they'll refund you the credits. It's a beta program. All right, so this is the one that didn't update with my prompts, but it actually looks pretty cool. And it recognized we got a scooter in the scene. We've got our diner booth. And it made the scooter look steampunk. It made the diner look steampunk. It honored the text in the background. So yeah, I mean, this is a great look. It's got this funky floating scooter. And then what do we got here? Futuristic diner. I didn't really give it that specific of a prompt, so I was thinking something a little bit more white and glossy and space age, but this does look like a futuristic diner if I had to take another interpretation of it. And a red space scooter also wasn't very specific there, but it did make the scooter red, even though the scooter was red. Yeah, overall honored the geography, added again some weird stuff on the side here, but that is also partly because this model does not have a wall on the side here, so it's open for interpretation of how Stable Diffusion interprets what the scene is. But yeah, you get the gist of it. You can bring in whatever models you want and build out your scene. And I'm bringing in an object, but I mean, if you're here in Envato, and I'm just using Envato as an example because I have a subscription, but there are tons of other marketplaces for 3D objects. You are just currently limited to these formats, which I know OBJ and FBX are more popular formats. So that does make it a bit more challenging. Hopefully they'll add support for those additional formats. If you can find the right format that's supported, you could bring in whole scenes into the model. Or you could also, if you're a little bit savvier and it's beyond the scope of this video, because I'm not entirely sure how to do it, but you could probably bring in some of these other objects into something like Blender, which is free, and then convert it into, or export it as a GLB or GLTF file to bring it into Playbook. All right, one other thing I do like to use, since we're all about AI, is the power of AI. To create objects that we can't find. So in this case, I'm going to create some on Tripo, which is a nifty and pretty impressive for the free offering, a prompt text to 3D prompt. You could also give it images and do image to 3D object creation. So going back to my original image that I wanted to create at the beginning of the video, I want my stack of pancakes, nice close-up shot of my stack of pancakes on a diner counter. So I'm going to make my stack of pancakes. So a stack of pancakes on a white plate. And so they'll generate a single image with 4 options, and then I'll pick the one I like, and it'll create a 3D model of it. All right, so this took a couple minutes to generate. If you're on a paid plan, it will work faster. And I was mistaken. It doesn't just give you the image, it makes 4 options of our 3D object. It's actually making me kind of hungry. Well, it seems like none of them honored the put it on a white plate request, but that's fine. This one looks good enough. And if you're doing characters, you could have it rig. You could use credits to rig it. Yeah, this Tripo has been very interesting and very cool. Kind of combining it with something like Playbook, where you can manipulate objects in a 3D space and create your frame. You can't really create objects there, so then you could use AI to create your 3D objects, or take scans of something else, or take an image, turn it into 3D, and then bring that into your scene, and then have that fine-tuned control over how you want your framing to be. So yeah, this is good. I'm going to download this, and it gives it to us as a GLB file, which is the exact file that we want for Playbook. So going back into Playbook, let me navigate my scene. Actually, I know with this camera, I'm going to want to move it over to our counter. So roughly get it there in place for what's coming next. I can delete the Vespa, and then let me import my new pancake model. Uh-oh. All right, and as you can see, what I mentioned before, like it wouldn't get too far, but yeah, every time you refresh it, refreshes your whole scene. All right, so I generated my pancakes here in Tripo. They look cool, but when I'm trying to import them into Playbook, I keep getting an error, and I think it's because of the file size. I think the file size might be 15 megabytes. It doesn't say explicitly, but I have imported past items, like this burger that I created for the short. So Tripo did a good job of making the burger, and I have successfully imported this in the past. So if I just go here and import the burger, so it's a huge burger, but it does work. It has imported. You can generate AI items, 3D objects, bring them in here. I just believe because this burger is like 12 megabytes, I think 15 megabytes is the file size limit. It just doesn't tell you that, and it crashes out. So I'm going to do another example. I'm going to go back to Envato, and I'm going to download a 3D model of an existing pancake, and then I'm just going to import that pancake into our scene. And okay, successfully we have pancakes. And now this will be a good example too, because this pancake style is very cartoony and not at all what I want, but it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter because we can just change the look of it as long as we sort of get the shape and the placement and the vibe of its pancakes on a plate. We should be able to let AI do the rest to modify the style. All right, let's get it into position. I just want to get it onto this counter. All right, that should be good. And then I just need to get my camera, which defaults to this position. And because I refresh the page, everything has reset. So if we get over here and get over here and we change it to 16 by 9, let's rotate our lens and maneuver over here and drop it down a bit. And maybe if I get on a 50 mil and kind of want to get a little bit higher and tilt down so we can see the diner vibe. Okay, and we'll keep it the 1960s diner and call it a stack of pancakes. And now let's finally generate our scene. All right, that was a very interesting interpretation of pancakes and a weird diner thing. All right, this is where segmenting will come into place. So keep that mask the same, come over here, add this new mask. It's going to be our pancakes. And I'm just going to call it a stack of pancakes, and I'll get rid of that prompt from here. And then let's see how it does with this more specific prompting. And then just for fun, let me see what happens if I turn it to flux. And I won't even say pancakes. Let's see what happens if I do it with just a general 1960s diner. Oh, okay, this one finished fast. So now remember, there's no data in the background, so it's kind of open for interpretation. But it now knows the pancakes. So it did a great job with the pancakes. And the style of the pancakes with the rest of the diner is pretty consistent. It feels like it is the same image. It's just this weird background. Let me change it so we get something that's a better example of just a better diner, something that has more data in the background, so we can get a better example of that. So I go over here, let me rotate my camera around. Let's get this shot. Whoops. Back it up a bit. Okay, so we'll use that one. I'll send that with Flux just to see how it goes. But then let me do my same Stable Diffusion with masking. All right, we got the same pancakes and it still remembers our specific prompt. So we will queue that one. All right, so this was the Flux one with no notes, but it got the style consistent. It makes it look like even the lighting is pretty consistent in this space. We have some of the glares on the plate. It turned them into waffles. Interesting. But it made the whole thing look like the same style, the same kind of uniform style. And we're in a diner and it's got this same lighting, reflections on the plate. So that's very interesting. This one, it's still a bit weird. What was this? This one was another Flux one from a different angle. Well, I didn't tell it was pancakes, so it's making it something else. This one's something. Yeah, so if I wanted to modify this more, I could add an image back here to give it a bit more of a define like what I want the background to be, because right now it's just negative empty space. I think I actually might be able to give it a little bit of control. Okay, let's go Stable Diffusion. We've got our background. I'm going to clear the background. All right, so we got our pancakes. Let's give this one more shot. From an angle with a bit more of a defined background. I want that close-up shot of the pancakes. I know my prompt was kind of medium close-up. I think this main prompt is 1960 Retro Diner. I'm going to get rid of the neon. I think the neon is throwing it off. All right, and there we go. That's a bit better. At least it got the background accurate. It looks like a diner, and we've got our nice close-up shot of the pancakes. Honored. Obviously, as with all AI stuff, takes a little bit of tweaking around. But we got something cooler, different, and we have control over what the pancakes look like, what the rest of the scene looks like, turning this blobby thing into a shot of pancakes. All right, and that's pretty much an overview of Playbook. As far as credits go, you've been probably seen up here that my credits, every time I run it, it takes about 10 to 20 credits. And then you could just top up and buy your credits. There's no subscription or anything. You just buy credits and run the website. Some other kind of feature wish cases that I've already touched on, obviously saving scenes, some more panel like layer navigation, be able to lock layers, just sort of basic property settings, basic stuff that you would find in like any other 3D editing program would be very useful to have here. But the other thing I would love to see is some form of either like I guess maybe it would be like a generative like texture, something to give the objects a texture, use the 3D prompts, but to create a consistent 3D scene so that we could have a 3D space. And if I move my camera here, I'm going to get the same generation, the same angle, so that I can have that consistency. That would be the next level of like what would be awesome to see, because this is cool for one shots, but every time you generate, you're getting a different vibe, a different look. So being able to have a consistent 3D space would be awesome. But yeah, that said, let me know what you think about Playbook in the comments below. Thanks for watching. I will catch you in the next episode.